going, Gig? Good to meet you, mate.
Hey, great to meet you too, Leroy. Hey, congratulations for the Last Rite.
Thank you so much. Like it's been a long journey, but it's like finally come to fruition. It's quite crazy.
Well, this is your. It seems like after watching this feels like your passion project. That's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. It was fueled with nothing but love and passion for the genre, but also the love of the supernatural side of stuff. It's quite a fitting film for my first one, to be fair.
Well, then that begs down the question: what originally sparked you to do this movie, The Last Rite, for yourself?
So, having had some experience when I was younger, having like sleep paralysis and night terrors, when I started out doing my first, as you would say, ideas for a feature film, it was really weird the way that this one came about, because a lot of the time I would get like a bit of a buzz for a type of genre or something. So I love action, but weirdly when I was working in Colombia, I had a picture of a man stood on the stairs, right? Really, really surreal thing, in a silhouette with a fedora hat. And I just couldn't get this image out of my head. And then I started remembering that, I'd looked into some cases before of shadow figures. I knew that I'd had my own experiences of sleep paralysis and that. So it just felt a story that I was really close to in terms of like the subject matter, because I wanted to serve the subject the best way I could without making it just about jump scares and stuff like that. I really wanted to stay quite true to some of the elements of demonic possession and sleep paralysis and those things. So yeah, The Last Rite was the most natural step forward.
Wow. So when you said that this is based on like true things, you weren't kidding. It actually happened to you.
Yeah. So I, very weirdly, I went through a massive portion of my life with what we would say like a memory block, right? So between the ages of like, I'd say 5 to 18, I had like no recollection of what I'm about to explain. But think of it like almost like if you had a sweet or a donut or something where the smell of the sweet or the smell of the donut unlocks part of your memory, right? You literally go, okay, you're back in time, you're back with your nan, you're back with your granddad, you're around a table, you have an entire memory system built in from the smell. This was literally what happened, but I was watching a documentary based on sleep paralysis. It was called The Entity. Channel 4, I think it was, done a documentary on it. And literally it unlocked part of all these suppressed memories from my childhood. Now, the reason you have like a suppressed memory a lot of the time is because of emotional stress and trauma. And I'd never experienced it. It's the only time I've ever had it, and I wouldn't like to experience it again. But I had all these memories of stuff I'd forgot. I had nightmare dreams that I remember. I had moments of waking up in the room with a guy in the room and all sorts of crazy stuff around that. And one of the weirdest memories that I remember having was of a Aboriginal man that used to come into the bedroom swinging a bull roarer around. So it makes like I don't know if you know what a bull roarer is. It's like at the end of a rope, there's like a boomerang, and
Okay.
you swing it around and it makes like a whirling sound, like does some weird sound. Well, this particular guy used to wait, like I used to wake up in the room and I'd see this man spinning this thing around. It was absolutely incredible. But yeah, so it wasn't a nice time to have all those memories, but yeah, let's just say it's quite close to me. Subject.
Well, it sounds like you had a happy ending, but you didn't take the path of exorcism to get rid of these so-called night terrors yourself, did you?
No, I didn't, but I did. There's part of the story, without giving an incredible amount of it away.
Yeah.
There's part of the story where the lead actress goes to find out some information. Now, I went through that stage myself. I reached out to a church. I reached out to a couple of churches because I couldn't explain the things that I was experiencing. So there wasn't just the sleep paralysis stuff that I remembered. There was like things that are to do with like empathic energy and things that are relatable to, I don't want to say clairvoyance, but there were things that were quite close to me where I was experiencing things I couldn't explain. And I just wanted to make some light of the situation. So I went to the church, tried to inquire about things, and I literally, kid you not, I remember most churches were shut when I went to try and ask them. They were only open on specific days. And also one of the priest people just sort of said, well, you know, I don't know what to say. And I was like, thank you very much. It's like, just wanted someone to just like nudge me a little. So I tried to use some of those real life elements that I experienced in part of the story as well. I think I got some of it across in there.
Well, that's great. So what were some of the inspiration of like exorcism that because I noticed a few of the scenes are, you know, it's like imitation, and imitation is a form of flattery, of course, you know, from other exorcism movies, especially like I want to say when the priest approaches you know, the house, for example. That was a great recreation, by the way.
Thank you. Well, I was trying to, throughout the film, what I've done is I've tried to interweave some elements of what I would call homages. So there's a vibe of it with Psycho. So there's like a little hand shot. It's not exactly replicated, but there's a hand shot that's in there. You know, what is the other one? There's obviously Exorcist. That's quite a big one. Poltergeist is another one, but that's really subtle. Because I think a lot of it's down to sort of like paying the way back to, you know, we're ultimately standing on the shoulders of champions, right, and kings. So everybody that laid the foundation before us, the forefathers of, you know, if we look at horror, if you look at like Alfred Hitchcock and people that like laid the way and pioneered the earlier stages of horror, you know, sometimes it's about sort of like recognizing that, you know, there's a foundation. And for me, that was quite important as a story telling aspect of the how should we say, the story I was ultimately looking at telling. So there was one shot that's in there. It's really subtle. Excuse me, sorry, 2 seconds. I've got a bit of a cold, so I do apologize. Most unprofessional thing. Right, back in the room. So yeah, one of the things that I really wanted to do with the story was to make sure that there was an Easter egg vibe of, if you watch the film and you say, okay, right, poltergeist, you know what poltergeist is. Yeah. But then you've got like, let's say there's an area where in the kitchen in poltergeist, there's like chairs stacked on the table. Now in film, this is one, there's a really small little segment where there's chairs stacked on the table. They're really tiny little things that for me as a filmmaker and as a storyteller, like, are really important, so that I pepper things throughout the lineage of my work, so that it showcases the fact that I care about the genre, you know, more so, and not just telling stories to have jump scares in there. You know, I look at everything that has gone before me to be able to lay a new foundation for other indie filmmakers and other filmmakers in years to come. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about like looking at what's in the savannah and trying your absolute best to be as original, authentic, but also you're not trying to reinvent the wheel as well. So yeah, it's been a good process.
Now, your Shadow Man, was that created in post, or did you actually have to, like when you're filming it, you have to have someone standing in the backgrounds of things?
Yeah, he was there. Post wasn't a luxury for us, you know, because I did all the editing and all of that, and most of the VFX, and one or two things that were done outside of house. But ultimately, we didn't have the luxury of being able to go, okay, we'll do that in post, we'll do this in post. So what we ended up doing was looking at how can I create a shadow in a man with a massive presence that doesn't have to be seen every 2 seconds, that also feels like it's palpable and in the room. And the only way to do that was to actually, do a couple of camera tests, figure out like when the settings needed to be on the camera to be able to create the depth, and then just make everything darker in post from like the color grading and that. But ultimately, it's what you see is pretty much everything in the film's practical.
Wow, that is amazing, especially with this being your directorial debut. I'm actually impressed.
Thank you kindly. Thank you for that. I mean, some of the process as well, which helped, is because I was the DP of the film as well. So like, obviously I wrote it, directed it, edited it. I did color grading. I did a lot of what you see. It allowed a lot of fluidity on the days when we were filming, because I could almost deconstruct and re-edit as I was filming, because I was in control of the camera. I was, directing the actors. It just made it so much more easier to communicate the message. There were long days, don't get me wrong. Lots of long nights. So, when I'm having to move a light around and stuff, and I'm the only one doing that, it's like, it takes up a bit of time. But when we got shooting, for the most part, it was there wasn't really anything that didn't not translate the way that I knew it would. So it wasn't really about trial and error. It was just about knowing exactly what story I wanted to tell as the story. So, yeah.
Well, tell us about your lead, Bethany Waller. How did you discover her, and how much prep time do you give her, or what is the prep procedure to give her for a lot of this challenging scenes she had to do for this film?
Yeah, so Bethan was absolutely amazing. I call her my diamond in the rough, and the reason why I use that analogy is because she was a shining star before really she'd done a lot of work. This was her first feature film. She'd done 1 or 2 short films. There were lots of other actresses that had a lot more of a body of work. But I believe in looking at talent in one, obscure places, but two, not just basing it on a social media presence and a following of such, because this is about telling the story. This is not about just getting eyes on the prize. Of course, that's a big important thing, but that's no good if the quality of everybody is not what I would see for the project. So she came to the audition, absolutely, blew my socks off with everything. But the weirdest thing, what really impressed me the most, was that when she was getting ready to do some of the demonic stuff, so we had the natural, like, conversational PC bits and bobs that worked into a horror scene, and then we had just all body movement action type of stuff with the body mechanics of how someone possessed would move. And before she started doing anything, she was warming up, she was stretching, she was, really taking it serious. And for me, I thought that was absolutely amazing, because it showed the dedication of that individual and what she wanted to achieve with the role. So ultimately, that was what sold me on getting her involved. And then after that, so we cast her in, when was it? I'd like to say February, like the first week of February 2019. But a week before that, I had tore my bicep doing door work. So, at the moment I was floating between doing work and, making films. I tore my bicep, and it pushed the entire production back several months. So she was supposed to film in March. She ended up not filming until September. So it allowed a lot more room for us to work on things to get her to the level. So we done like a demonic boot camp. We had like 2 days where we spent 2 days in a room just talking about like you know, 3 stages of demonic possession, talking about shadow figures, talking about, you know, oppression and stuff that goes into making an atmosphere in a house where it could be conducive to an actual haunting or poltergeist activity type of thing to take place. So yeah, there was a lot of, I mean, without going into every detail, there was just a lot of prep time that she put into it. And yeah, very, very pleased with the result. And I'm sure she is too.
Everyone should be pleased with this result. This is great, Leroy. One more thing before I let you go is you were a wrestler, a big wrestler back in the UK. I just want to know is how did you go from wrestling to the director's chair? I mean, this is not a path that a lot of people think. I mean, when I think, I don't think of, you know, The Rock or John Cena being in the director's chair anytime soon.
You know what, I really honestly, I wish I had an answer. I don't know. I'm someone who works very much in I work very much in an intuitive state. So I try to not overthink things. I just do. So I've been someone who's been a practitioner of the do, not so much of the theory. So, you know, the wrestling was cool. I had an excellent time there. Probably if I'd have kept pursuing that, it would have most likely been, I would be in WWE. I had a match on in the O2 Arena for WWE on SmackDown. So I'd done stuff where they were aware of who I was, which was quite cool. But I got to a stage where I just fell out of love, if I'll be honest. I wasn't happy with the direction I was going. Weirdly, I was at the top of my game when I walked away. I had like my highest profile match, but I just wasn't fulfilled. So I did a little bit of let's say mind work before I started to make the transition out of wrestling. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be creative and be in control of my destiny a little. So a few things led to another. I got involved with acting. I still do a tiny bit of acting and / stunt work now, but for the most part, like the filmmaking process is like my absolute baby, and I love bringing an idea to life. And I think that was what bit me with making films, was that there's worlds that can be created just from having an idea and a vision to make that idea work. And there's just something magical about like meeting people for the first time and allowing them to share their version of what they see in your work, bring that to life on the screen. And here we are talking about that, you know, like I could have just been a wrestler, you know, not that that's a bad thing, but I could have just stayed there. And I feel very thankful that I didn't just limit myself to that box. So yeah, it's all good.
Well, I think this is a great next chapter for you, because once you got a taste of this, I don't think you could ever think about going back. So
no way, no way. I love it.
Well, Leroy, hey, thank you very much for speaking to us about The Last Rite. I can't wait to see what you follow up after this. This is great.
No, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Gig. And yeah, just thank you for having me on and having a chat. Really appreciate it.
Hey, hopefully we get to do this again next time.
Excellent, man. Wicked. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.